Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Jules Leahy. I want to welcome you to a teeny bit of a different style video that we're going to do. I want to do sort of longer form lectures and just want to really dive into things. It's going to be a little bit more just like you and me. Um, and today, for the first one, I want to talk about finding your voice on slide guitar. This is something that I think every slide guitarist is working on. Everybody who's working on a sound, working on finding their voice on an instrument. But in this case, I just want to talk about specifically slide guitar. There's a lot of really cool stuff that goes into it. Um, Without further ado, the best place to start is talking about some actual slides. This one's really cool. I have spent a lot of time playing with an actual Coracine bottle. This definitely comes from the Duane Allman influence, huge Duane Allman fan. And this was given to me by Jelly Roll. Jelly Roll is the guitar player in the Alameda All Stars. The Alameda All Stars, back in the 90s and early 2000s, were formerly known as Greg Allman and Friends. They were the Friends, so they were Greg Allman's backup band through the 90s and 2000s. I got to play with these guys for a few years, just a few years ago, and this was a gift from Jelly Roll. And I have to say, if you haven't played with a Coracine bottle, if you're sort of a glass type of player, if you like bottleneck glass, that glass on the string sound, this thing is really special. It's kind of hard to put your finger on it, but it feels really, really good. Um, it sounds great. It's just kind of got that like Dwayne sound. So Coracine bottle is really cool. They're a little hard to come by. They're expensive. I think they're like $200 for an original one. But if you can get your hands on a Coracine bottle, that's a really cool way to start. I have a few other ones over here. I'm going to highlight this really cool slide that I like from these guys, the Rock Slide. The Rock Slide make really great slides. This is a really interesting one. It's glass, but the end is sort of tapered. So I've got the fatter end, at the base of my pinky. And then at the tip of my pinky, it's actually tapered so that I can really grip the slide. Okay. It's not just like the end up here is smaller. So I can really like feel the slide. And that helps just with, the specificity of playing a note or every single note, right? So this one's very cool if you're a glass person and, Coracine's too expensive. I really recommend the Rock Slide. These are great. Another one from the Rock Slide is the Ariel Posen signature slide. This one's pretty different from the glass, and it's different in a good way. It's brass, and it's kind of got this aged, look to it that is definitely really cool. But aside from the brass, there's this cool little thing where it fits on your pinky really comfortably. Obviously, you don't have to be a pinky slide player to use this. It could fit on any other finger. But for me, the way that it fits on my pinky just feels really comfortable. This brass slide combined with the Mulecaster is a really special sound. To me, it's definitely very saxophony between the hollow steel body of the Mulecaster and this brass slide. When you play notes, I just feel like the harmonics pop. And it doesn't really sound just like a wooden guitar. It sounds like something else. So anyway, this is another slide that the Rock Slide makes, and these are awesome. One other type of slide is this is a clay slide. This is by pardon me. This is by Moonshine Slides. And, I haven't used this one as much as the others, but I do like it. It has a more sort of dead sound. The thing about the harmonics popping is it's not quite happening with this slide in a way that I like. Like I want that from this slide. It's very cool. And I'm just bringing these up as suggestions. And maybe you didn't even know that there were some other types of slides out there. So these are just things to consider. And I'm going to put on my glass slide first. And now I want to talk about influences. And by the way, this is less of a literal guitar lesson. I'm going to play plenty, but I'm not about to tell you where to put your slide on the frets or, eighth fret. It's not about that. This is more about, a conceptual like way to develop your sound. So now that we've talked a little bit about the gear, some of the gear with our slides, let's talk about some of our favorite influences. And I'm going to start first by talking about some slide guitarists. And it seems like a very logical place to start by talking about Duane Allman and Derek Trucks. So if you are kind of new to slide guitar, I'm sure that you've heard Derek Trucks' name and Duane Allman. You probably are pretty familiar with how they sound already. Those guys are both in open E a lot of the time. Derek's basically exclusively open E for his slide stuff, and Duane just tunes his Les Paul up to E when he's going to do slide. So that's a great place to start if you want to learn open E, just kind of like, when people think of slide guitar, Duane and Derek, if you just focus on those guys, that's a lifetime of work right there, just learning all their licks, getting in their head, their phrasing, their tone. I would start with those guys. Now, moving down the list to some other favorite slide guitar players, because believe it or not, there are a ton. And it's not just Derek Trucks and Duane Allman. There are a ton of great people out there. The next two that I would recommend checking out and just highlight, for you to check out, these are two of my very favorites, are Ry Cooder and David Lindley. And these guys, I mention them together just like Derek and Duane because they're two of the greats, and they play very similarly to each other. There are some great concerts of them playing live together where, if you close your eyes, it's like almost, you can definitely tell that they love each other's playing. And so they're kind of copying each other's licks, and sometimes it can be kind of hard to tell who is who. But a similarity that Ry and David Lindley have is they're incredibly melodic players. I feel like they're less showy or flashy. They've got plenty of that. They've got plenty of chops. But what strikes me about those two is that it's just always strong melodic playing all the time. Their tone is just beautiful. You can usually hear one note and go, that's Ry Cooder. Or, if David Lindley is playing a solo on somebody else's record, it's like, okay, you know what? That's David Lindley. He's one of these all-time great sidemen who's on a ton of records. So Ry Cooder and David Lindley. And like I said, there are specific concerts just on YouTube that, if you don't know these names, I would check out David Lindley and Ry Cooder. Just type that in. Watch those guys play together. Watch how they do it. They're doing things like David Lindley is playing a Weizenborn a lot of the time. So that's like a big sort of Hawaiian style, big acoustic guitar. And just the way that those guys play off of each other is worth internalizing, spending a lot of time observing, trying to cop their licks, So Ry Cooder and David Lindley. Let's see here. Next up on my list, there's one other guy that I want to talk about because, and I said earlier, there are plenty of slide guitar players. This is, we could spend a lot of time talking about a lot of these guys. But another guy who just has a very unique way of playing, also in open E a lot of the time, is Sonny Landreth. And I've been checking Sonny out quite a bit recently. His whole behind the slide fretting notes style of playing is really beautiful. He'll do these more sort of position-based things where he'll play out of like one fret quite a bit, and he'll do all this behind the slide maneuvering. That to me was kind of elusive for a really long time. Like, I didn't have my guitar set up the way that would really work for that. So I don't know, that was kind of like things that other people were doing and I wasn't doing too much of. But honestly, since I got this guitar, the Mulecaster, it's kind of opened me up to understanding that, wow, I should add this to my vocabulary and to how I think about playing slide, I've definitely kind of focused on it's sort of been like a sacred steel sound. I used to play with pretty high action and the strings just like really tight. And I like that. But now that I got this guitar, it's kind of a better, I call it like a hybrid setup, just because you can really comfortably play slide on it. And if you aren't a slide player, great, it's set up for that really well too. But while you're playing slide on this guitar, now you can really comfortably fret behind and just add these chord voicings. Your single note lines have this other dimension where not everything's just a slid note where you have to like really have precise tuning, and you can be a little bit more loosey goosey. I'll demonstrate that in a minute, but these are all the things that go into your slide guitar sound and your voice. I haven't talked about or played one lick or anything yet. We're conceptualizing and sort of envisioning and thinking about our own sound. Some of the things that I've talked about, some of the artists, I think if you go back and listen to them, just with the things that I just mentioned of, Sonny Landreth, check out how he plays in one position and the mileage he gets out of one zone. That might not be something that's on your radar right now. So, and that's also something that I'm working on every single day, is like transferring what he's doing into what I'm doing. This brings up a huge sort of point of the whole thing. And it's a tricky one. This gets complicated because when we start playing, it's really, I think a common goal that we have is to sound like that guy on the record, our hero, that lick that he played. And so we'll probably spend quite a while. It's pretty natural to want to copy. And, if there's like a Duane Allman solo or something, we're probably going to want to strive to sound as much like Duane as we can, right? Like, that's great. Now, where this becomes a problem is the copycat syndrome. And that is where you just start sounding like, you're copying somebody, and that's all that you have to say. That's something that is to be avoided. And, imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? But if you're an original artist and you go, hey, everybody, check out my single, or here's this record I made, and when people play it, if they hear that you're copying Derek Trucks, that's just not, that isn't the goal with what we're talking about here. This is about finding your voice. And so now this is where studying guys, like let's say you're studying Derek Trucks and Duane Allman, but you're also into, reggae and you like jazz. Well, let's picture some Venn diagrams going on here, right? You've got these different sort of influences. And I think the trick is to finding where does the Venn diagram sort of overlap of your different influences, and what's going to make it sound the most like you? What's going to bring your voice out of the instrument the very most? So that's a lifetime process. I'm definitely working on it. I've had different modes of, I've played in Allman Brothers cover bands. And like I mentioned, the Alameda All-Stars, Greg's former bandmates. And that's a really good time to kind of lean into playing a lot like Derek and Duane. I still don't try to copy them in that setup, right? Like when I'm playing with Greg's old bandmates, I'm still going to try to sound like myself, a fair amount, but just sort of like with the tip of the cap to Derek and Duane. But in that case, for me, that Venn diagram is like Derek, Duane, and then it's mostly Jules, right? But as soon as you get all these people and their styles sort of internalized, this is a lot of hard work. That means learning their records, learning their solos, learning the licks, watching the videos of them playing backstage where they're just kind of tinkering. And you just get to know how Ry Cooder touches his guitar. And when he's just sort of chilling, how does he act with it? How does he hold it? How does it sound? There are these great videos of Derek Trucks playing these like sort of dress rehearsal, behind the scenes. They're like getting ready to go play a show at Red Rocks or something. And I always find that those kind of teach me almost more than the actual performance of the guy up on the main stage. Getting to see this person in their natural, they're just getting ready to go out on stage or whatever. They're working with the singer who's the guest, and they're trying to get their thing ready for that night. To me, that's such a learning experience, soaking that up. And I'm fortunate enough to have been playing slide guitar for about 15 years or so. And in general, I've been, at this point, 15 years of focused work and studying of all the greats. I feel like I can draw from inspirations and influences kind of at will, but, it's a subconscious thing that happens now. I'm really just trying to serve the music. And, this study over 15 years leads it to be hopefully a pretty natural thing, and I don't have to like think about it too much. It just comes out sounding like me now. Still working on that. That is not done one bit, but that is my goal, and I'm working on it. And you've got to feel like you're here, and your goal is up here, and you're not there yet. The moment you think, "Hooray, I did it," that's probably not a good place to be. You got to be working. We want to see about where we're going, not what we have right now, but, what we need later. We want to work towards that. So anyway, that's a lot about just sort of the headspace, combining your influences, taking inspiration from people. Copying at first is great, but, we don't want to just go out and play a gig and sound like we just learned that solo yesterday and now we're just playing the licks from the solo we learned of some other guy. That is not the goal. So you've got to do that about 1,000 times, and then maybe you'll start sounding like yourself. Let's see here. Now, next up, I want to talk about... this is really cool. So the coolest thing to me about slide guitar is that we're eliminating the frets. Right? So there are 12 notes from here to here. Or we can play them like this. Right? So that takes all of our finger mojo out of the equation. And that's sort of the magic of playing slide, because now we're responsible for the difference between, here's our root. We're responsible for the ever slightest difference between this note and this note. See how between the flat third and the major third, there are a ton of notes. That's where you can put your fingerprint on your sound, how you distinguish and sort of, if you're going to lean on or sort of favor like the minor third, or if you slide up into the major third, how long it takes for you to do that. I feel like the old country blues guys, like way back in the day, Tampa Red, Sun House, they have these Elmore James. They have vibrato that's very different from somebody like Derek Trucks or Dwayne Allman. But that intonation, where they put their third, that sort of thing has a lot to do with how somebody sounds, right? So we're dealing with these spectrums now. Each string is a spectrum. And instead of just 12 frets getting up to the next octave, we've kind of got a countless amount of notes that are at our disposal, right? That is very cool, really powerful. And something that I also would stress, just talking about this, is the intention with your intonation. This is just such a huge thing. I think when people are doing things like fast runs, they want to do the sort of sacred steel, like, Mariah Carey, a gospel style, like vocal run. Where I see it sort of not work is pitchiness. The intonation is what really makes a run land, okay? So if you're kind of like dancing through and you go, boy, most of those notes were out of tune. Slow it way down. Work on your intonation first. If Derek Truck's intonation was really bad, we wouldn't love all the stuff he does. He does the same thing a lot. And I'm not taking a single thing away from Derek. He's one of the all-time greats, and I love him to pieces. But if we're being honest about it, he has like a handful of things that he does really well. And he does them so well that, he's up on the Mount Rushmore of guitarists of all time. But you get what I'm saying. This is like, what are your strengths? Well, for slide, we need to be able to play one note and have it sound beautiful. That means it needs to be, nice vibrato. The pitch needs to be great. So don't just like rush over your intonation and go, oh, that doesn't really matter. That matters so much. Okay. I cannot stress that enough. Forget playing fast or any of that stuff. We need your intonation to be really good. Now, another thing that is very cool, and here's something that I love to do with my slide guitar setup. If you've seen any of my other videos, like my slide masterclass, there's a little chapter on this. I love playing with a volume pedal, and that's just by my foot. And so that allows me to go like this. I can do things like, I can really make notes talk. And to me, since guitar players, this is actually like a huge thing of finding your slide guitar voice. Slide guitar players and guitar players in general have a funny syndrome. We can just play all day. We don't have to take a breath. We can just play mindlessly and just sort of shred. We can noodle till the cows come home. And what's really nice about the volume pedal is that this kind of, this gives us this sort of impression of like taking a breath and then playing a note. You can absolutely do this with a volume knob, but for me, I'm sorry, my hands are busy playing guitar. I would rather have my foot do something like this. Right? That's just a tiny little example, but if I just leave it all the way down, it sounds a little bit more like this. And all the way down, this is toe down, so all the volume. That's nice, but it's kind of one-dimensional. It's kind of flat. So now here's just a little bit of volume pedal, okay? Okay, and that's just like a moment of playing around so that you can see. I really like to, I don't live on the volume pedal with my foot. There is this funny thing that you want to avoid, which is like coming in and out of the mix too much. I usually end up just kind of going toe down, playing volume from the guitar to get my tone. And then if I'm playing a solo that's like, a low dynamic, like the band's really quiet and I want to bring it way down, that's when I'll get into the super dynamic volume pedal stuff. But most importantly, now we've got this element of breath, right? I'm not just a guitar player and just hitting the strings and, this dynamic way of playing is super duper important. Like this is just so important. I cannot stress, we do not just want this to go up to 11, and that's not where we live in slide guitar land, I don't think. So I'd encourage you, if you don't have a volume pedal already, to try with a volume pedal, just playing guitar in general, but especially slide. As I just demonstrated, it's this, at first it feels kind of like rubbing your head and patting your belly, and it's like, it's a lot to manage. But if you just get comfortable practicing with it, you end up sort of speaking the notes. And that's just really magical to me. I'm really glad I found that. My professor at Berkeley, David Tronzo, who is one of my he's right there for me with Dwayne Allman and Derek Trucks. David Tronzo is definitely one of the greatest slide players in the whole world. If you don't know him, check him out. But I'll never forget hearing him when it was just the two of us in a room. When he was getting these sounds with the volume pedal, it was like this whale in the ocean. You know, he had this way of making it so sweet. And if he wanted to, it could be like so intense and heavy, you know, and like hard and distorted and kicking ass. So that just made an impression on me. Volume pedal is a huge part of a sound that I wanted to get 12 plus years ago when I was at school. And now it's been part of my sound ever since. I don't really think I could live without it. Also helps you just not sound like a guitar. You know, a lot of the time saxophone, harmonica, those are some of the great instruments that I think of that like we can kind of sound like with slide guitar. So let's see, next up, I want to talk about, you know, now it comes to a great time where I'm basically going to sort of wrap it up. I'm probably going to follow this up with a little series of videos like this. But what I want to do now is I'm going to just demonstrate a fair amount of these ideas and concepts. And I'm going to play just sort of a nice little free experimental. It's fairly bluesy, you know, in as far as the vocabulary that I'm going to use. But I'm going to just try to experiment with getting some new sounds. And, you know, I might fall flat on my face and just make a mistake. If I do, I want to share that with you, because that sort of moment is where you grow and you learn, you know, oh, okay, I kind of sucked at that, but maybe if I work on it this slightly different way, not only will I be good at it, it'll be something like unique to my playing. Pardon me. So anyway, I'm just going to play for a minute, and I'm going to explore the range of the guitar, some techniques. I want to try different vibrato. I'm going to try approaching notes different ways. So here's some free play, and I'm just check out what I'm doing. See if I do something that is a technique that you're not familiar with, and let's just see where this goes. So this is free play. This is me exploring, and, you know, I'm trying to not just go like this. That's great, but that's kind of like playing in one position, and, you know, I want to try to explore more zones. So here's some free play demonstrating a little bit of me just trying to find my voice with slide guitar, and hope this inspires you. Okay, so that's just sort of free play, you know, is Some parts might be a little more impressive than others, and some of it might have just sucked. But that's how you work on this. That's how you work on it. You don't just play the same licks over and over. I love the Statesboro Blues solo by Duane Allman, but we can't just learn that and just play that. We've got to learn all the other songs going on. I have another video on this channel about learning Mariah Carey lines, and I break down Always Be My Baby, which is one of her biggest hits. And those vocal runs are just, pretty amazing to study and to learn and get your hands on slide guitar. So I think learning Mariah Carey style vocal runs on guitar is just as important as learning Duane Allman Statesboro Blues solo is, right? You just don't want to pigeonhole yourself. You don't want to get stuck only knowing how a slide guitar lick works. I'm going to go into more depth about things like how to transcribe, how to listen. I'm going to go into all these other videos. I can't wait to get into all this stuff with you guys. It's really exciting. But for right now, I think this is a great way of just sort of hopefully leading you to some water that you're going to drink. And I just want to inspire you to check out some of these guys that I mentioned in the video. I think they're amazing. They're, Ry Cooder, David Lindley, Sonny Landreth, Duane Allman, and Derek Trucks. If you don't know one of those guys, you've got a lot of really cool stuff to check out, all right? But anyway, this is a new video series that we're starting. I'm really excited to dive into some of these things, and I'm just gonna get into some long form videos with you guys. Please let me know in the comments below if there's something that you'd really like to see me talk about. Or if you have any questions on this video, I'll list the gear that I'm using. Love the rock slide, love the Coruscant bottle. The only other slide that I don't think I mentioned specifically that I'm using is a Jim Dunlop. It's just like the good old slide. I don't think there's anything very specific about it. It's the medium thickness, and this one is smaller. That's the only thing I would say about it. I think if you have a slide that you're kind of swimming in, that doesn't help you play, really precisely. So getting a slide that fits you comfortably is definitely a big part of just enjoying doing it at all. And also, last but not least, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do. We're putting videos like this out all the time. And if this just wasn't quite enough, if you'd like a little more specific help and some lessons, I teach privately. So feel free to send me a message through my website. I'll definitely get back to you. And I've been enjoying working with a lot of the people who follow this channel. It's been really great. So thank you all for contributing, for watching the videos, and I'll see you in the next one.